Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and let yourself be carried away by a story from the Middle Ages. Welcome to our channel. Tonight, we travel back in time. The rain is a soft, rhythmic patter against the leaded glass of the high, arched windows, a sound that has no beginning and no end, a constant, liquid lullaby that wraps around the stone walls of the Scriptorium. You sit upon a smooth, oaken bench that has been polished by the robes of 100 novices before you, feeling the solid, unyielding weight of the wood beneath you, a grounding presence in the cooling evening air. The Scriptorium is vast and shadowed, yet your world has narrowed down to the small, amber circle of light provided by a single thick candle of yellow beeswax. The scent of the burning wax is heavy and sweet, mingling with the earthy, metallic tang of the iron gall ink and the faint, dusty musk of aged parchment. You are safe and warm, and the world outside the monastery walls is a distant, fading memory. Before you lies a fresh sheet of vellum, its surface cream-colored and slightly textured, having been scraped and stretched until it is as supple as silk, yet as sturdy as the stone floors beneath your sandaled feet. You run your fingertips lightly over the edge of the page, feeling the microscopic grain, the ghost of the animal it once was, now transformed into a silent vessel for sacred words. The candlelight dances across the surface, casting long, lazy shadows that stretch toward the dark corners of the room where the great wooden presses and storage chests sleep in the gloom. The air is still, save for the occasional soft pop of the candle wick and the distant, muffled tolling of a bell from a far-off tower, marking an hour that does not matter here. Time moves slowly, like the honey-thick ink in your ceramic pot, and you find yourself breathing in synchronization with the steady drip of rainwater from the stone eaves outside the window. In the small pot to your right, the ink is a deep, obsidian pool, reflecting the tiny, flickering flame of your candle like a dark, miniature mirror. You take up your Quilla primary feather from a white goose, cured and hardened in warm sand until it is the color of old bone, and you feel the familiar, hollow weight of it in your hand. It is a light thing, a mere breath of a tool, yet it feels like an extension of your own fingers, a bridge between your mind and the waiting vellum. You dip the nib into the ink, watching as the dark liquid climbs the slit of the quill by capillary action, a slow and deliberate ascent. The world is quiet, and as you hold the quill poised above the page, you can hear the faint, rhythmic thrum of your own heartbeat, a slow and steady drum that matches the glacial pace of the evening. Across the long, slanted writing desk, the master illuminator, Brother Thomas, sits in a pool of his own light, his movements so slow and precise that he seems almost a part of the architecture itself. His hands, weathered and spotted like the very parchment he works upon, are steady as he applies a sliver of gold leaf to a grand capital letter at the beginning of a psalm. You watch, mesmerized, as he lifts the gold with a fine brush of squirrel hair, the metal so thin and delicate that it shivers in the air like a dandelion seed. He places it upon the page, where a thin layer of fish glue has already dried to a tacky sheen, and he breathes softly upon the gold to set it. The sound of his breath is like a distant sigh in a forest of pines, a gentle hushing sound that tells you all is well. He does not look up, but his presence is a warm, steadying influence, a reminder that the art of the book is an act of patience and peace. The scratch of your quill against the vellum is a dry, satisfying sound, a tiny rasp that marks the passage of time in millimeters and strokes. SSHHH, SSSHHH. The quill whispers as you form the rounded belly of a letter, then the long, elegant spine of another. The ink flows from the nib in a controlled, dark stream, soaking into the fibers of the parchment, becoming one with the page as it dries into a matte finish that will last for 1,000 years. You are copying a text of botanical remedies, and as your quill traces the names of herbs lavender, chamomile, valerian yew, can almost smell the drying bundles of plants hanging from the rafters of the infirmary. The work is repetitive and rhythmic, a meditative dance of the hand, and eye that lulls your mind into a state of profound stillness. The world is quiet, and the only reality is the tip of your quill and the soft glow of the candle. In the margins of the page, Brother Thomas has begun to sketch a series of drollery's tiny, whimsical figures that live in the borders of the holy words. You see a small snail with a knight's helmet, its shells spiraling in a perfect, golden ratio, and a series of vines that twist and turn like the paths of a labyrinth. He points a gnarled finger toward a miniature illustration of a pilgrim, a tiny figure with a wooden staff and a wide-brimmed hat, frozen in a perpetual journey across the bottom of the page. Though he does not speak, the story is there in the ink. A tale of a long walk through mist-shrouded valleys and sun-drenched heaths, a journey that mirrors the slow, deliberate progress of your quill. You feel a sense of kinship with the pilgrim, for you too are traveling through the landscape of the page, one letter at a time, moving toward a destination that is as quiet and certain as the coming sleep. The rain continues to fall, a gentle percussive backdrop to the scratching of quills and the occasional soft rustle of a page being turned. The smell of the rain on the cold stone of the windowsill is fresh and clean, a sharp contrast to the warm, heavy scent of the ink and wax inside. You feel the cool draft from the window brushing against your cheek, a soft reminder of the vast, dark world outside the scriptorium. But it only makes the warmth of your candle feel more precious, more protective. You are safe and warm, tucked away in this stone cocoon where the only task is to be still and to create. The repetitive nature of the script, the vertical lines and the curving bowls of the letters, creates a visual rhythm that begins to blur the edges of your consciousness. Your eyelids feel heavy, weighted with the peaceful exhaustion of a day spent in quiet labor. The candlelight seems to grow softer, the amber glow expanding to fill your vision until the shadows and the light are one. The master illuminator begins to pack away his brushes, his movements as silent as falling snow. You watch as he closes his ink pot with a soft, wooden click, a sound that signals the end of the day's work. You carefully lay your quill aside, feeling the lingering vibration of the writing in your fingers, and you look down at the lines you have completed. The ink is still slightly wet, shimmering in the light like the surface of a dark pond at midnight. You breathe in one last time the scent of the scriptorium, the wax, the parchment, the rain, and you feel a deep, unshakable sense of contentment. The world is quiet, the work is done, and the monastery is settling into the deep, velvet silence of the night. You are safe and warm, and as the last candle is extinguished, the darkness is not a void, but a soft, welcoming blanket that invites you to rest. You settle into the high-backed wooden chair at your writing desk, feeling the ancient oak press firmly against your spine as you adjust your position in the scriptorium's amber-lit stillness. The cushion beneath you has been compressed by countless scribes before you, its wool filling shaped into a perfect cradle that accepts your weight without resistance. Your fingers find the familiar smoothness of the desk's edge, worn soft by decades of robed sleeves brushing across its surface, and you rest your palms there for a moment, feeling the coolness of the wood seep into your skin. The rain continues its steady conversation with the leaded windows, each droplet adding its voice to the gentle percussion that has become the evening's constant companion. You can hear the water sliding down the diamond-shaped panes, gathering in the corners where lead meets glass, then releasing in tiny streams that catch the candlelight as they fall. The sound is neither urgent nor insistent, merely present, like breathing, like the passage of time made audible. Safe and warm within these thick stone walls, you feel the monastery's protection surrounding you, its mass standing between you and the wet darkness beyond. Master Aldrich sits 3 desks away, his profile illuminated by the beeswax candle at his workstation. You watch his hand move across the vellum page with the unhurried precision of water smoothing stone, his quill tip leaving behind letters of such perfect uniformity they might have been carved rather than written. He does not look up from his work, but you sense his awareness of your presence, the way a tree knows the birds that nest within its branches. The scriptorium holds you both in its peaceful embrace, and you are safe and warm. You turn your attention to the manuscript before you, a psalter whose pages you have been copying for the past fortnight. The vellum lies flat and willing beneath your hands, its surface prepared with pumice until it achieved the texture of soft clouds made solid. You run your fingertips across the page, feeling the slight resistance, the way the material seems to whisper against your skin. The smell of the vellum mingles with the honey-sweet scent of beeswax and the mineral darkness of iron gall ink, creating an atmosphere that exists nowhere else in the world, nowhere but here, in this quiet room where words are preserved. Your quill rests in its holder, a simple reed vessel that keeps the sharpened goose feather at the perfect angle. You reach for it slowly, feeling the weight of the shaft settle into the curve between your thumb and forefinger. The feather's natural oils have been absorbed by your skin over many evenings of work, creating a connection between tool and hand that requires no conscious thought. You dip the nib into the inkwell, watching the black liquid climb the metal tip through invisible channels, drawing itself upward as if eager to become words. The world is quiet as you begin to form letters on the practice sheet beside your manuscript. Each stroke requires your complete attention. The angle of the nib, the pressure of your hand, the rhythm of your breathing. You create a vertical line, then another, then the curved bridge that connects them into the letter N. The sound of quill on parchment is softer than whisper, a scratching so gentle it seems to come from inside your own head rather than from the world around you. You make another letter, then another, feeling your shoulders relax further with each completed form. Master Aldrich shifts in his chair, and the old wood releases a low creak that travels through the stone floor to your feet. You glance toward him and find that he has set down his quill. He is looking at the page before him, but his eyes are unfocused, seeing something beyond the vellum, beyond the scriptorium's walls. His hands rest flat on either side of the manuscript, palms down, fingers spread, as if he is drawing knowledge from the page through his skin. The candlelight flickers across his weathered face, and you notice how the shadows pool in the lines around his eyes, lines carved by decades of squinting at parchment in insufficient light. You return to your own work, feeling the comfortable weight of silence settle over you once more. The rain has intensified slightly, though it remains gentle, and you can hear it drumming on the herb garden below the scriptorium windows. You imagine the water soaking into the earth around the sage and lavender, the rosemary and thyme, nourishing roots that sleep beneath the surface. The world is quiet, and you are safe and warm. Your hand moves across the practice sheet, forming letters that you will eventually transfer to the precious Psalter pages. Each character must be perfect, identical to its neighbors, creating the visual harmony that transforms mere words into objects of contemplation. You shape an A, then an E, then an O, feeling the circular motion required by the round letters, the way your wrist rotates to accommodate their curves. The ink flows steadily from your nib, neither flooding nor starving, maintained at the perfect consistency through the careful balance of ingredients Master Aldrich taught you to prepare. The candle at your desk has burned down a finger's width since you began your evening work, its flame shortening as the wax pool deepens. You watch the light waver slightly, casting moving shadows across your hands, across the page, across the stone wall behind your desk. The shadows are soft-edged and friendly, dancing slowly to music only they can hear. The beeswax releases its sweet scent more strongly as the candle burns, mixing with the monastery's permanent perfume of old books and older stones, of wool robes and wood smoke, of rain and time and peace. You continue forming letters, one after another, as the evening deepens around you and the rain continues its patient conversation with the windows. And you are safe and warm in this quiet place, where nothing happens except the slow, meditative creation of beauty. The parchment accepts each stroke with a soft, thirsty sigh. Beyond the window, the last of the light clings like a silver sheen to the raindrops caught in the ivy. Your candle flame dips gently in a draught too soft to feel, making the shadows of your tools, the burnisher, the ruler dance a slow, silent reel upon the wall. The scent of beeswax from the sealing wax mingles with the parchment's earthy smell, a fragrance of quiet industry. In this suspended hour, your breathing syncs with the rhythm of your work, a silent anchor in the tranquil heart of the storm. You sit at the wooden desk, palm resting on the cool grain, feeling the faint ridges where ink has dried from earlier nights, the scent of warmed beeswax and lamp oil rising in a slow, steady thread, the sound of quill on vellum, a thin, endless scratch that measures out the hours. And you breathe in and out in time with the scratching so that the world is quiet and safe and warm. You lift a sheet of vellum between finger and thumb, feeling the slight give and the hairline tooth beneath the skin, smelling the faint tang of lime and dried hide that clung to its surface, hearing the rain against the arched windows as if it were a distant drum. And you rule faint lines with a bone folder in a motion repeated and precise, until the lines are the same as the ones before and the ones after. The world is quiet and safe and warm. You prepare the ink with a steady, habitual rhythm, grinding a small, familiar bead of lampblack against glass with gum arabic, so that the mixture thickens slowly under your thumb, smelling the bitter iron sour of oak galls when you stir, and hearing the soft plink of droplets falling back into the mixing bowl as you lift the quill and test a hairline. And you let the repetitive motion settle your hands, and the room as the steady scratch returns like a metronome. You lay out tiny cakes of pigment ultramarine like darkening sky, verdigris the color of pewter leaves, ochres like the monastery stones, and you grind them with a porringer and touch each powder between your forefinger and thumb to judge the grit, smelling the mineral dust that rises and hearing the barely audible rasp as the pestle moves in the mortar. And you mix with egg white or gum until the paste takes on the sheen you remember from last week. The world is quiet and safe and warm. You watch the elderly master illuminate the folio before you with movements that are almost slow as the rain, seeing the way his wrist holds the quill like a soft compass, feeling the warmth from his lamp brush your knuckles when he leans, smelling the subtle salt of his skin and lavender from an old sachet tucked in his robe, hearing him breathe in a rhythm that matches the slow cadence of the bell from evensong. And you trace the margins with your gaze, where tiny botanical drawings settle like small secrets, and the world is quiet and safe and warm. You follow the ritual of gilding as if it were the day esprier, applying a base of gesso with a rabbit hair brush in the same long, even strokes each time, feeling the subtle resistance of the gesso as it meets the vellum, smelling the papery sweetness and the faint iron tang of old remedy inks drawn in the margins. hearing the bristle whisper over skin and the candle flame little hisses of adjustment. And you wait with patient hands until the ground is tacky enough to receive the gold, so that your actions match the slow heartbeat of the scriptorium. You lift a leaf of gold on the tip of a dry brush, feeling the electric thinness between brush head and metal, smelling the beeswax smoke from the nearby candle that softens the brightness, and hearing the tiny, crystalline sound as the gold settles against the bowl. And you press with a practiced, even pressure to lay the gold down, and then burnish with agate until the surface sings its own low, velvety note that is almost like breathing. The world is quiet and safe and warm. You notice, in the slow between strokes, the stories tucked into initials and borders, seeing a pilgrim estaff curled within a letter, and feeling the curious ridge of raised pigment under your fingertip, smelling the faint scent of thyme, and rose that the master says were used as remedies, and hearing again the soft scratch that draws a leaf or a tiny bird. And you let the quiet procession of these small images go past you like a slow line of travelers, so gentle that the world is quiet and safe and warm. You repeat the motion of trimming edges with a sharp knife, feeling the cool bite as the blade parts vellum from edge, smelling the metallic bite of the blade and the milky scent of scraped parchment, hearing in the echo the distant footfalls of a monk on the stone stair, and the steady fall of rain as if a second hand. And you make the cut again and again until the edge is as straight as a thought. The world is quiet and safe and warm. You bind your stack of quires with rough linen thread in a patient series of over and under loops, feeling the tension of the cord tighten under thumb and forefinger, smelling the warm starch from the binding cloth, and hearing the soft creak of the boards as they accept the spine. And you wrap and knot and sew in the same slow pattern until the book holds together like a small, sleeping animal in your hands, and the room hums with the familiar hush that keeps the world quiet and safe and warm. You collect scraps of old sheets and press them between wooden boards to flatten, touching the smooth faces as the wood absorbs a little warmth from your palm, smelling the layered musk of ink and vellum that lingers in the pressed pages, hearing the distant monks at table moving cutlery in a muted clatter, and the quill as thin, endless scratch across your desk. And you tuck the pressed folia onto a low shelf so that they may rest as you rest. The world is quiet and safe and warm. You lay the finished page beneath the lamp, feeling the tiny elevation where gold catches the light under your fingertips, smelling wax and thyme as the gold seals to the bowl more firmly with every breath you take, hearing the room breathe along with you in the whisper of pages being turned, and the soft, steady patter of rain that never hurries. And you keep your hands near as if to reassure the manuscript that it will not be left alone. The world is quiet and safe and warm. You let your mind go slow as the candle dwindles, following the Master S hand as it moves across the page and remembering names of herbs the margins suggest planting for a grazed knee, chamomile for sleep, feeling the callus of long hours on your thumb, smelling the faint, calming bitterness of tea from the cup at your elbow, hearing the monastery bell toll once, slowly, as if to mark a good and ordinary end. And you close your eyes for a moment to hear only the quill and the rain, and the world being quiet and safe and warm. You find yourself seated upon the heavy, smoothed oak of your writing stool, the grain of the wood familiar and cool beneath you as the evening deepens into a profound and velvet silence within the scriptorium. Outside, the rain is a constant, rhythmic presence, A soft and persistent drumming against the leaded glass of the high, arched windows that separates you from the damp, dark world beyond the monastery walls. The sound is a low, textured hum, a lullaby of water meeting stone, and you feel entirely safe and warm within this sanctuary of cedar and stone. The air is thick with the comforting, dusty scent of aged parchment, the sweet, heavy aroma of melting beeswax from the flickering candles, and the sharp, metallic tang of the oak gall ink resting in its horn. Every breath you take is slow and measured, drawing in the stillness of the room, where the only movement is the dancing shadow of a flame against the lime-washed walls. The vellum page before you is a pale, creamy expanse, its surface having been scraped and sanded until it is as smooth as the petal of a lily. You reach out a hand, your fingers brushing the edge of the sheet, feeling the slight, organic resistance of the animal skin, a material that has been prepared with such patience that it seems to hold the very essence of time within its fibers. The world is quiet, and your task is singular and small. You pick up your quill, a sturdy goose feather that has been cured in heated sand to give it the necessary flexibility and strength. As you hold it, you feel the lightness of the tool, a mere extension of your own hand, and you take a moment to appreciate the curve of the barrel and the precision of the slit you carved into the nib earlier that afternoon. Beside you, the master illuminator moves with a grace that is nearly silent, the heavy wool of his habit whispering against the stone floor like a soft breeze through dry grass. He does not speak, for the scriptorium is a place of meditative silence, but he leans closer, the warmth of his presence a steadying force in the dim light. He points a weathered, ink-stained finger toward the margin of the manuscript you are currently copying, where a series of intricate vines begins to curl around the text. You look closely, your eyes following the delicate path of the lead point underdrawn, and you see the hidden world tucked away in the borders. There are tiny, meticulously rendered bluebells, their heads nodding in a perpetual, painted wind, and small, industrious snails with shells spiraling in perfect, golden ratios. The Master S finger moves to a small figure of a pilgrim, no larger than your thumbnail, dressed in a cloak of deep malachite green, trudging eternally toward a distant, shimmering cathedral in the corner of the page. You begin the process of grinding a small amount of lapis lazuli for the blue of the pilgrim's sky, the rhythmic sound of the stone pestle against the marble mortar creating a hypnotic, grinding melody. It is a slow, repetitive motion, one that requires no haste and no exertion, merely the steady application of pressure. You watch as the semi-precious stone transforms from a hard, unyielding mineral into a fine, celestial powder, a blue so deep and rich that it seems to swallow the candlelight. You mix it with a drop of glare, the clarified white of an egg, and the scent is faint and earthy. The world is quiet, and the rain continues its gentle percussion against the glass, a reminder of the vast, wet landscape outside that makes this small circle of amber light feel all the more precious and secure. The master gestures toward a section of the margin where a cluster of botanical remedies has been illustrated with scientific precision. You see the jagged leaves of the feverfew, the soft, rounded petals of the mallow, and the intricate, lacy umbels of the wild carrot. These are not merely decorations. They are a silent library of knowledge, a record of the healing plants that grow in the monastery's infirmary garden. You imagine the monks of centuries past walking through those gardens, the scent of damp earth and crushed herbs clinging to their robes, just as the scent of the ink clings to yours now. You dip your quill into the ink, the liquid clinging to the nib in a dark, glistening bead, and you return to the text, your hand steady and slow. The scratch of the quill against the vellum is a tiny, crisp sound, a rhythmic punctuation in the silence that marks the passage of another moment in this long, peaceful evening. As you work, the master begins the delicate process of applying gold leaf to the initial letter of the chapter, a grand, scrolling M that dominates the upper left corner of the page. You watch from the corner of your eye as he applies a thin layer of red bowl, a smooth clay that provides a cushioned base for the gold. He waits for it to dry, his breathing so shallow and calm that it barely disturbs the air. When the moment is right, he lifts a sheet of gold leaf, a substance so thin and ethereal that it seems to float upon the very air, held only by the static of a wooden gesso brush. He breathes a soft, warm sigh onto the parchment to create the necessary moisture, and the gold settles onto the page, gleaming with a dull, rich luster. It is a transformation of base materials into something transcendent, yet the process is as grounded and simple as the rising of bread or the falling of rain. The candle beside you flickers, the wick curling into a glowing ember as the wax pools in a translucent lake. You feel a heavy, pleasant lethargy settling into your limbs, the kind of tiredness that comes from a day spent in quiet, meaningful labor. Your shoulders are relaxed. Your mind is clear of all thoughts save for the movement of the quill and the sound of the water on the roof. The master moves away, his footsteps fading into the shadows of the long hall, leaving you in a state of solitary contemplation. You look at the page, where the wet ink catches the light, and you realize that you are part of a long, unbroken chain of hands and hearts, all working in the same hushed stillness to preserve the stories of the world. The distant sound of the monastery bell begins to toll, a low, resonant bronze vibration that hums in the very stones of the floor beneath your feet. It is not a call to hurry, but a signal that the day is closing, a gentle reminder that it is time to rest. You carefully wipe your quill with a scrap of linen, the fabric soft against the feather, and you place it back in its tray. You close the ink horn, the wooden lid fitting with a satisfying, muffled click. The rain is slowing now, transitioning from a downpour into a fine, misty drizzle that whispers against the window. You stand slowly, your movements fluid and unhurried, and you look one last time at the manuscript, the gold leaf catching the final glow of the candle. You are safe, you are warm, and the world is quiet. You turn away from the desk, leaving the scriptorium to its shadows and its peace, as you prepare to drift into a deep, dreamless sleep, carried by the rhythm of the rain and the memory of the golden light. You sit at your wooden desk in the scriptorium, your body settling into the worn groove of the bench that countless scribes before you have shaped with their patient hours. The vellum page before you glows amber in the candlelight, its surface smooth as river stones beneath your fingertips. You trace the edge of the parchment, feeling the slight texture where the animal's skin was scraped and stretched and prepared for this very purpose, for this very evening, for your careful work. The world is quiet here, safe and warm within these stone walls. Brother Thomas sits 3 desks away, his white beard catching the golden light as he bends over his own manuscript. You watch his hand move across the page with the steadiness of water flowing down it, never hurried, never hesitating. The scratch of his quill joins the whisper of rain against the leaded windows, creating a rhythm that seems to slow your heartbeat, to gentle your breathing. You dip your own quill into the iron gall ink, watching the dark liquid coat the tip, feeling the slight weight of it as you lift the instrument toward your page. The letter you are forming is a capital B, the beginning of a psalm verse, and you draw the vertical line with careful slowness. Your hand remembers the motion from yesterday's practice, and the day before, and all the days stretching back through the weeks of your novitiate. The ink flows onto the vellum in a steady stream, dark and permanent, becoming part of something that will outlast you by centuries. You breathe in the smell of the ink, metallic and earthy, mixed with the beeswax of candles, and the old book scent of vellum and leather bindings that line the shelves along the walls. Brother Thomas rises from his desk, his woolen habit rustling softly as he moves. You hear his footsteps, measured and unhurried, crossing the stone floor. He comes to stand beside you, and you feel the warmth of another presence, comforting in the vastness of the quiet room. He does not speak immediately, and you continue your work, completing the curve of the letter, adding the smaller curve within it. The world is quiet, safe and warm. The letter B, Brother Thomas says finally, his voice barely above a whisper, soft as the rain, contains within it the shape of 2 hearts, one above the other. You look at your work and see what he means, the 2 rounded chambers of the letter like vessels waiting to be filled. He places a gnarled finger near your page, not touching it, pointing to the space you have created. In the manuscripts of the Eastern monasteries, they sometimes fill these spaces with gold leaf, making each letter a small sun on the page. You nod, imagining the gold, though tonight you work only in black ink, learning the fundamental forms before you earn the privilege of illumination. Brother Thomas moves to the supply cabinet, its old hinges creaking with a sound you have come to find comforting, familiar. He returns with a smaller manuscript, one of the monastery's treasures, and sets it carefully on the desk beside yours. You see the pages, thick and substantial, covered in script and decoration that takes your breath away with its intricate beauty. This page was made 40 years ago, Brother Thomas says, turning to a section marked with a ribbon. I was your age when I drew these margins. You lean closer, seeing the delicate vines that wind around the text, tiny flowers blooming in intervals, their petals rendered in red and gold. In the corners, small animals peer out. A rabbit, a bird, a fox, each one no larger than your thumbnail, yet perfectly detailed. The world is quiet here, safe and warm within these ancient pages. Brother Thomas points to a particular flower in the margin, a 5-petaled bloom rendered in pale blue. This is borage, he explains, his voice maintaining its hushed, unhurried quality. We grow it in the monastery garden. The herbalist uses it for courage and comfort. But here, in this manuscript, it also serves as a reminder to the reader of courage and faith, comfort and prayer. You study the flower, seeing how the illuminator has captured even the slight droop of its star-shaped petals, the way they hang like bells waiting to be rung. The rain intensifies slightly against the windows, a gentle drumming that seems to wrap around the scriptorium like a blanket. You return to your own page, continuing the line of text below your decorated letter. Each word forms slowly beneath your quill-beatus verb, qui non abiet blessed, is the man who walks not. The Latin flows from your pen with the rhythm of a chant, words you have heard sung in the chapel, now taking solid form on the page before you. Brother Thomas turns another page in the old manuscript, showing you a capital letter D, its curve filled with an entire miniature scene, a pilgrim walking along a road, his staff in hand, his pack on his back. This pilgrim, Brother Thomas says, represents all pilgrims, all journeys. The illuminator who made this had never traveled beyond these monastery walls, yet he understood the weariness of the road, the hope of the destination. You see the tiny figure, no larger than a grain of wheat, yet somehow conveying motion, purpose, the endless patient placing of one foot before another. You work in silence for a time, Brother Thomas returning to his own desk. The two of you joined in the quiet labor of manuscript making. Your hand moves across the page, forming letters, creating words, building lines of text that will be read by monks you will never meet, in years you cannot imagine. The candle beside you flickers slightly, sending shadows dancing across the vellum, but the flame steadies, continues burning. The world is quiet here, safe and warm. The rain continues its gentle song against the windows, and you continue your careful work, each stroke of the quill a meditation, each letter a prayer made visible. The scent of beeswax mingles with the faint, sweet perfume of dried lavender from a sachet held on the shelf. Your hand moves with a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat, the nib whispering its secrets to the waiting page. Beyond the stone walls, the distant call of a night heron echoes over the rain-soaked meadows, a lonely yet comforting sound that seems only to deepen the room's profound tranquility. Here, time itself